Difusión.
Responsabilidad.
Colaboración con la sociedad.
Conservación, acceso y difusión.
Alfabetización de información.
Servicio híbrido, pronto, expedito.
Experiencia.
Paz.
Hospitalidad.
Empatía, tanto de bibliotecarios como de autoridades para crear un espacio acogedor.
Libertad intelectual, acceso abierto y derechos de autor equilibrados.
Las bibliotecas necesitan dar una alfabetización de información a sus usuarios para poder usar recursos impresos y electrónicos.
En estos tiempos necesitamos bibliotecas ligadas a jardines de paz, que son espacios verdes donde el usuario puede acudir a leer y entonces estar en contacto con la naturaleza es muy beneficioso para todos.
Para mí la biblioteca moderna debería ser la biblioteca como un ágora.
La biblioteca como un espacio de estudio y recreativo.
Difundir la lectura es lo que nos hace falta en las bibliotecas.
Ir a una biblioteca para cubrir ciertas dudas y curiosidades que me dan del día a día, ¿no?
En estos momentos la tecnología ha llegado tanto que tenemos libros electrónicos, pero para mí en particular es mucho mejor tomar el libro, tocarlo, palparlo y disfrutar de una lectura.
Una biblioteca me gustaría que sea un espacio de conocimiento, pero también de una vivencia. Experimentar, leer con un libro en papel es invaluable y quisiera que se conservara.
Good day, everybody. It's great to be gathered here today, and I'm Leslie Weir, the president of IFLA, and I'm speaking to you today from the northern part of Turtle Island. And today's a very special day for us because we are commemorating Truth and Reconciliation. It's our National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and today I'm wearing my orange t-shirt pin in honor of the children that were taken from their homes, from their families, and from their communities and put into residential schools where they suffered many injustices. So, thrilled to be here with you today, and I'll just let my colleague introduce herself.
Hi, Leslie, and hi, everyone. I'm Vicki McDonald and past president of IFLA, and it's fantastic to be joining you today. It's actually in the evening in Australia, so terrific to join you. Leslie, terrific to see you as well.
Well, it's great to be back together again, Vicki, because we had such a great time at Willock in Astana. Seems like it was just a few days ago or maybe a lifetime ago, but it was a great Congress. And I'd like to begin by thanking Martha Elena Ramirez, the National Librarian of Mexico, for that wonderful opening video that we had that highlights so many of the aspects that are important to people about our libraries. And I think we're looking forward to talking more today about Bolder, Stronger Together. And Vicki, maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about Stronger Together and your theme over the past 2 years.
Sure. Thanks, Leslie. I guess, as you know, and I suspect many of people listening today know that each IFLA president is given the opportunity to choose their presidential theme. And I guess that theme's purpose is to provide inspiration during the term of the 2 years, but also to outline some ambitions. And when I was choosing my theme, I guess one of the things I was thinking about was that this time, probably more than any other time during my career, and I've had a long career in libraries, as a profession, we're more frequently being asked to articulate and defend our values, and that's to our political masters, our communities that we serve, whether it's a city, a university, a school administration or corporation. So I guess that was in my mind. Also, at the time that I became president, our federation needed to build trust with our membership. And so my mandate was very much to work together with the governing board and our members and our volunteers to become a stronger and more resilient federation. So I chose the presidential theme of Stronger Together. And I think as a profession, we have an innate drive to collaborate, we share. So we are very much accustomed in working together, but I think the theme was really around we will be much stronger if we work together for the power of our libraries, our communities, our federation, our countries. So that was the theme that I chose for 2 years, Stronger Together.
And Vicki, there's no question that your presidency has left us stronger together. And I think it's important that we continue to be stronger together, especially in these days of rather volatile geopolitical situation. And so building on the work that you've done over the past 2 years and that we've done together at IFLA, I want us to continue to be stronger together. And at the same time, I want us to be bold. I really want libraries to step up and take their place. And in this tumultuous world that we live in, we have great opportunities because libraries really are at the heart of their communities, and they have such an impact on ensuring the success of each and every person that's a member of their communities. And at the same time, that will make their community successful, it'll make their country more successful, and it will create opportunities as well for people within libraries to take on new challenges, create new opportunities. We've got the IFLA trend report we're going to talk about a little bit later, but it really highlights some of the things that we need to do to be able to be a strong global library sector. And at the same time, I think that it's also important for us to focus on the areas where we really do share interest and making sure that libraries are not only being successful, but they're recognized for that success. And so we're going to be working together to be bold over the next 2 years while we remain stronger together. And Vicki, maybe you'd like to go into a little bit about the trend report that was launched in 2024.
Sure, thanks, Leslie. And so the IFLA Trend Report, as you would recall, many of you, I think, would remember that it was launched at the IFLA Information Future Summit in Brisbane. And I think that's almost exactly 12 months ago today that the summit started. And the Trend Report, I believe, is one of the most influential tools that IFLA has provided to us as a profession over the last couple of years. It's very much built on the premise that we can influence our future, and it's very much focused on the future and the role that libraries can play. So the Trend Report was developed by Professor Michael Deswani and Dr. Kim Osmond from the Queensland University of Technology. It's a very easy read, and I really do encourage people to download it from the IFLA website. I think what's particularly good about it is it actually identifies opportunities and challenges, and it's a tool that we can use in our sessions, our strategic planning sessions, etc., in our libraries, and that's certainly what I've done. The slide that we've got in front of us at the moment does outline very at the top level of the 7 trends. And I think it's really important to remember that the trends very much overlap. They work together. And as you read through the report, you'll see that there's so much buried within each trend. And I'm only going to speak very briefly about it. But the first one is around knowledge practices are changing. And it particularly looks at a number of themes around seeking non-Western voices in our collections and the content that we make available, the need for personalised information, but also the issues of misinformation and disinformation in our communities as well. I think any discussion at the moment in libraries always brings up AI and how we're using generative AI in our work, and that's looked at in Trend 2. But it looks at how we create, share information, but of course the potential of AI, but also the harms that we certainly need to be aware of as well, and talks about deep fakes and things like that. And I think it's just so hard now to identify authentic content. There's so much out there that's being manipulated at the moment as well. We go then to Trend 3, which is around trust is being renegotiated. And I think there's a lot being spoken about the need for governments and the media, particularly to regain trust from the communities and societies in their work. I think as a profession, we're very fortunate that we are trusted by our communities, but we certainly can't take that for granted. And it explores themes like how news is being controlled by conglomerates across the globe and the power and the forces that they have, declining local news. I know we're in Australia where we're collecting newspapers, they've virtually declined. We don't have local newspapers telling the local stories of each community as well. Trend 4 picks up the idea around skills and abilities are becoming more complex. As organisations, we need new skills and new abilities, but there's also a talent shortage across the globe, and it explores some of those areas. Trend 5 is something that I spend a lot of time working on in the institution that I'm working in around digital technologies are unevenly distributed. And this picks up areas like digital inclusion, the fact that people don't have digital connectivity, the skills and the access to access information, and how that limits their social and economic lives as well. So a lot around the digital divide is getting bigger, and why we need to focus on digital inclusion. Trend 6 is around information systems and using more resources. And this really picks up a lot of concern around climate change, sustainability, the resources that are required to power the different systems that we're using in libraries, but also picks up themes around e-waste as well. And Trend 7, I think, is something that we can all identify when we're working in libraries, that people are seeking community connections. Loneliness is one of the big scourges of our society, and we know that people are seeking connections with online and in person. We've got a growth in online communities, but I work in a library that serves the public, and I can see that people really just want to come and be somewhere and be with other people. So very quickly, the 7 trends, and I think some of those will come up in our conversation today. But I do encourage people to look at the trend report. Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And I think the trend report really does give us something of a roadmap going forward, and it will be debating many of the areas that have been highlighted in the trend report. And so I encourage everyone as well to read the trend report and, focus in on the areas you think really have an influence and an impact on your specific library. We do know that we're in a quite radically changing world. The pace of change is very, very quick, and people often look to libraries to support them through those changes. At the same time, we need to be ready and have the skills that are required to be able to address the challenges that we've addressed through for many years, but also take on the new challenges that we're facing. And certainly, as Vicki mentioned in one of the trends, the new technologies and the impact and influence of artificial intelligence, is one area that we can see is having an impact on society. Although I think we're not quite sure where it's all going to go and what the next step is going to be, or the next development. What we do know is there will be a next development. And that is partially where we do become stronger working together, because we'll have different experiences in different libraries that we can share with each other. And so that we can build on success and maybe be able to finesse our way out of where we might not have been as successful by having advice of colleagues around the world. So we really are trying to work together to bring the stronger together, and for us to be bold over the coming 2 years to be able to respond to these changes and to be able to support libraries themselves around the world, but also support the people that work in the library and information profession to be able to have the skills that they need to be successful and to support their libraries in serving their communities. So we are doing a series of discussions, which we began back in July, moving through Vicki from through Vicki's presidency into for 2023 through 2025, and into my presidency, which began on August 21st, 2025, at the Congress in Astana, because IFLA too can build on its success and make sure that we have momentum moving forward to support libraries and the information professionals around the world. So at this point, I would like to move into a poll, and hopefully everyone can get into our Menti poll and can answer this rather critical question for us in our world today. What are the biggest challenges facing your library today? And we'll give people a little bit of a time to be able to vote on the biggest challenges, and we can build something of a word map here to help us understand the challenges that you're each facing in your libraries today. Now, Vicki, I know you and I are each facing challenges in our own libraries as well as opportunities. And while we wait for our Menti poll to populate our view, is there anything you'd like to share with the group in terms of some of the things going on at your library?
Well, actually, I have a session today with some of my colleagues and talking about our strategic plan, but also our strategic risks and opportunities. I guess one of the big risks that we identified was around funding, but also cybersecurity is a big issue that we're thinking about a lot in our organisation. So that's certainly a couple of the ones that came up in our discussion. So I'm just not seeing anything come through. But I guess, talking about some things we've already talked about is digital inclusion is something that is very much on our agenda. I did mention that earlier when I was talking about the trend report. Just last week, I flew to a very remote community in Queensland, a small community of about 1,000 people on an island in the Gulf of Carpentaria. If you all go to your map and look up Mornington Island, you'll see that it's a very remote part of Queensland. And what we were doing was establishing technology in that community and providing them with access to the internet, but also to the tools that they would then have to access information as well. But I can see we've got some, I might have set the theme though, Leslie, sorry, with the budget and the funding.
Well, but I think we are all facing budgetary constraints, and oftentimes libraries and information services are targets when there are tight economic times, and certainly in Canada, we share actually all of the areas that your library is in discussion and debate, because of course, like Queensland, we do have quite a few remote areas and communities that are isolated, especially in the Canadian North. So we can see, interestingly, we do, yes, have the funding questions coming up, and possible funding cuts, which may create elimination of jobs, but also the political influence and pressure that some may be experiencing in their countries as well. And I'm glad to say in Canada, we are, I think libraries are finding pressures often around such things as censorship. But in general, I think libraries are able to carry out their mandates without too much interference. But that may not well be true in other countries. And so we also have concerns about perceptions of just being a building or a room of books, and the lack of AI transparency, and that may also be part of our job in helping AI be more transparent for the public, but also ensuring that members of our team understand and can work with artificial intelligence. And we are still having, I think, censorship issues in a number of countries around the world, and that's certainly true in Canada as well. So we have a number of these trends coming through, and I think they do relate to a number of the areas that are highlighted in the trend report, and also that have come through in the sessions that we did both in July in the lead up to the Congress, and then in the President and the President-elect sessions that we held in Astana. And I think at this point, I'd like to introduce our guest who's with us today. We have Louis Coffett-Gunn, who is the CEO of the Chartered Institute of Library Information Professionals in the UK. And we have asked him to join us and be part of the conversation. So welcome, Louis. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, both, and lovely to see some familiar and some new faces joining today. And thanks for doing the work on the trend report. It was timed very nicely with our new 5-year strategy. So I'd done an initial bit of work understanding where we're going to be in 2030 as a profession. So it was nice to then compare that with what IFLA had done. And there was some similar answers, some slightly different framings, but we definitely recognized everything in there. And it was really useful developing our own strategy. And I was also thinking, so I put in the chat, I'm at the governing party in the UK at the moment is Labour. So I'm at the annual Labour Party conference up in Liverpool. And if I look at that list of trends, all of those topics have come up at this conference, and sometimes libraries kind of mentioned as part of the response. Not always librarians, bit of an important difference, but there's a real sense that we have a unique contribution to make on all of those kind of difficult issues that society is dealing with, but somehow our government and lots of other governments don't always think of us enough as being able to help with some of those issues.
That's so true, and quite often, even when they're talking about culture and heritage, that libraries don't always seem to be recognized and mentioned. And I think that's something that we can all work together on, trying to raise that profile for that understanding. Now, we did learn a number of things from the sessions that we had in Astana, and of course, Louis, you were part of the president's session. And we have a number of key takeaways that include I think one of the top ones was that communities have diverse expectations of what they want from their libraries. And at the same time, that we shouldn't be underestimating the impact that we do and could have. So I don't know, Louis, whether you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, impact is one of the themes of our new strategy, actually. It's probably going to be called Empowering Impact. And that's because a lot of people love libraries and love librarians just for what we do and who we are, and that's amazing. And in this day and age, that should be celebrated, but we can't rely on that. I think a lot of people don't think of us, or if they do, they have those slightly outdated perceptions. So I think framing what we do around impact is kind of reminding us we need to really demonstrate and visibly show the positive impact that we have on society across a huge range of issues. And that the NGO always call us a Swiss Army knife service, those little knives that have lots of different tools on them. So yes, we're buildings full of books often, and we help people with reading and literacy, but there's a long list of other things we can help with, and that's a strength because it allows us to meet different needs and address different policy agendas and meet different funders kind of requirements. But it can also be a challenge because it can be a slightly confusing message where we kind of list all the things that we can help with, trying to reduce and kind of boil down what libraries and librarians offer is very hard. In the new strategy, I've got it down to 3 words, but it could be argued for it to be lots of other words. So we're often a kind of a profession of lists. And I think certainly for us at Still It, we're trying to get better about just having one message to different audiences at different times. We can kind of change it over time rather than, I think what we've certainly done is kind of list everything we could possibly do at once, which can be a bit kind of overwhelming and confusing. And it's a very crowded space. We're in this context, we're competing with spending on defense and spending on health and other priorities for that the government and people are dealing with, the cost of living crisis. So I think trying to think about our audience and what their priorities are, and then framing how we can help. And it's very rare to find an issue where we can't help in some way. So yeah, for us, that impact word is really going to be important over the next 5 years, and helping visibly show the impact. We know we have an impact. We're just not always great as a profession, and we're not always great as an association in helping our members tell that story.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because in Astana and the polls we did, people actually felt that they were confident as advocates, but they also felt that having success with advocacy didn't necessarily translate into financial support for the libraries. And so I think you're really hitting on some key areas there. I like the way you said 3 words, because certainly whenever I am connecting with any influencer or decision maker, I always make sure I don't have more than 3 ideas that I'm trying to leave them with, because I feel as soon as you go to the 4th, they forget the first 3. So I think that's a skill that I think that we can build, and it hopefully will have the impact that you're suggesting over the coming years, and that may end up being a theme in terms of the global library community as we move forward, and we are being bold that we actually can have that impact. It was interesting too, because we've had coming through, as well as advocacy and the importance of that, we also had the importance of innovation and really being creative in how we use things like technology. And we also found in Astana that people felt that we are very innovative and creative, but that other people think we aren't. So that probably also relates to advocacy and to communication, and actually providing examples rather than a long narrative about what we're doing. So yeah, I don't know. Did you want to add anything, Louis, before we move on to our next video?
No, go for it. Thanks.
All righty. Well, so our next video is Pilar Martinez, who is the CEO of the Edmonton Public Library in Canada, and she's also the chair of the Urban Library Council. And so let's hear what Pilar has to say.
Hello, friends and colleagues. My name is Pilar Martinez, and I'm the CEO of the Edmonton Public Library, located in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I'm also involved in the IFLA North American Regional Division and METLib. Libraries have always been places of knowledge, learning, and discovery. They safeguard ideas, inspire curiosity, and bring people together. But as we face mounting challenges in today's world, we must ask, what does society truly need from its libraries right now? First, libraries must promote and champion intellectual freedom with conviction. The right to read, view, watch, and listen is fundamental to an informed and democratic society. Libraries safeguard open access to ideas, challenging, inspiring, and thought-provoking, so individuals can explore perspectives, engage in meaningful discussion, and shape their understanding of the world. But freedom is only valuable if people take the time to engage with ideas, and that engagement begins with reading. In an era of distractions and shrinking attention spans, we need libraries to foster deep reading and thoughtful reflection. Reading is more than just consuming information. It's about slowing down, absorbing complex ideas, and developing critical thinking. Books cultivate empathy, expand perspectives, and fuel self-discovery. Libraries must be spaces where people reconnect with the joy of reading and build habits that strengthen their ability to think deeply and critically. Reading also shapes how we connect with others. The knowledge we absorb fuels discussion, broadens understanding, and lays the groundwork for dialogue. That's why libraries must be places that encourage civic discourse and bridge divides. Social isolation and polarization threaten the fabric of communities, but libraries offer space for people to come together, share ideas, and engage in constructive conversations. They create common ground, a foundation for respect, collaboration, and collective problem solving. Libraries are also centers for learning, growth, and opportunity, whether it's fostering early literacy, supporting lifelong learning, or equipping individuals with essential skills. Libraries empower people to shape their futures. They spark curiosity, drive innovation, and provide pathways for building stronger, more informed communities. And as highlighted in the 2024 IFLA Trend Report, libraries are no longer on the sidelines of change. They're key actors in shaping it. The world needs them to be proactive, inclusive, and future-ready. From addressing misinformation and the digital divide, to adapting to emerging technologies and preserving cultural heritage, libraries are uniquely positioned to meet the challenges of our time. Their role is expanding, not replacing their roots, but building on them. Now is a time for bold actions. Libraries must embrace innovation, design inclusive services, and anticipate the evolving needs of the communities they serve. They're not passive institutions, they're catalysts for progress, defenders of knowledge, and spaces where curiosity, trust, and connection can flourish. In this moment, libraries are not just valuable, they're vital. And if we want a future defined by knowledge, dialogue, and belonging, we must advocate for them now. We must champion their role, strengthen their reach, and ensure they continue to serve as pillars of intellectual freedom and community resilience. Libraries don't just store knowledge, they empower people to create a better future. Thank you.
So hopefully everyone could hear. We had slight volume issues, but Louis, I'm interested to get your reactions to some of the things that Pilar shared with us. She, of course, was asked the question, "What does the world need from its libraries today?" And I think she gave us quite a comprehensive answer from her point of view. And so, would you like to jump in with some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting the way she framed it around starting with reading as the kind of the entry point, the foundation to everything else. And I think sometimes as a profession, that is what we're recognized for. And sometimes we get frustrated when people don't think about all the other things we do. But I like the way she framed it as this is our entry point to everything else. You can't help with digital inclusion or well-being unless you've got that kind of baseline that libraries offer to people. So I just like that framing to kind of as a way of getting around that kind of the thing we're most commonly known for, and setting that up as a kind of strength and a precursor and a foundation for everything else that we can then do on those long lists.
And I guess it's interesting. Sorry, Vicki, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I mean, I've obviously listened to that video a few times, but I think one of the things that really struck me when I listened to it this time is the link to something that David Lang said in our last session before Astana, was around the, libraries used to serve communities, but now our role is to save communities. And I think she's picked up a lot of key points there, particularly around, civic discourse and the strength of building communities, and which I think really very much aligns with what David Lang said in one of our previous sessions.
Exactly. And I think that's a really critical point as we kind of went from serving to supporting to saving in some cases. And we're also seeing trends actually where reading skills in many countries are actually dropping. We certainly have that experience in Canada. And so it's interesting that libraries are kind of known for the brand of reading, and at the same time, maybe the collaborations aren't always as closely recognized with education and libraries, and then at the support of the family in terms of developing readers so that we can do all of these other things. So any other points that either Louis or Vicki would like to raise in relation to Pilar's, or would we like to move on to our next poll?
I would just briefly.
Think she picked up a thing. Well, I mean, sorry, Louis, but I was just going to say, she said bold action is required. So she's on theme, I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
She's read the trend report too.
Sorry,
and that's similar. No, that's similar to what I was going to say, that we should be confident that we have something to offer which is unique. We have expertise, we have capabilities that no other profession, no other bit of our institutions, our society has. And it's about addressing some of those really tricky problems that are highlighted in the trend report. So yes, it is about being bolder and being confident in ourselves. We are a long-standing expert profession, and nobody cares about content, information, and people's ability to use those things the way that we do. You know, we're often seen as in competition with the tech sector and the tech industry, I think, but actually I think we're quite complementary professions. You know, I've described them as the kind of, they're the plumbers, they make sure the data and the information gets to people, but we're the sommeliers. We care about what the quality of what gets to people.
Yeah, interestingly, Pilar and her library are involved in an initiative in Canada that started with the Toronto Public Library, where they're actually looking at doing, we're doing a national survey, and it includes a major metropolitan public library from each region in Canada to look at the social impact of their library services. So not just how many books are loaned or how many people came to events, but what impact did reading a certain book or getting access to a certain website or attending a certain event have on the individuals. And when the Toronto Public Library did this study about 18 months ago, it was taken very seriously by the influencers and decision makers in Toronto. And in fact, their funding was increased to ensure that all 100 of their branches could be open 7 days a week, because the politicians felt it was so important that people have access to the libraries, and that they have access when they were available to be able to go. So we'll be excited to see the outcome of this national survey where each city will be able to know their impact in their city, and then they can look at how they fit in to the national picture. So I think that'll be quite interesting. And now maybe Vicki, would you like to introduce our next poll?
Sure. So if Stephen puts up the poll, I think it's going to pick up some of the themes that Pilar was talking about around intellectual freedom as well. So there's some quick, it's a much quicker poll. Really, do you have a policy for intellectual freedom? Does your governing board support intellectual freedom? And so it's just a quick yes, no, and I guess to give us a quick picture, because we're going to pick this theme up in our next video as well. So we're getting some voting there now. And I guess in our previous sessions, we've got very affirmative responses to these questions. So I guess this is looking a little bit different, is my recollection, Leslie, to the previous ones, that there's less libraries here having a policy on intellectual freedom as well. And we've then got another two questions that we'll ask people is, how ready are they to explain why intellectual freedom matters, and how can we, so which is, again, I guess goes back to what Louis was talking about, is our ability to talk about the key matters in a way that is quickly understood by our influencers, the stakeholders, the decision makers as well. And so I think we're getting quite a high score there as well. Any comments, Louis, on the situation in the UK? I guess one of the things I was going to ask you about and it sort of flows into this, is that I see that The Librarians was released on the last week as a film in the UK and the US. So I haven't seen it, but it certainly talks about spanning the heroic role of librarians in society as well. Are you able to? Have you seen the movie, the documentary?
Yes. Yeah, so for those not familiar, there's been a couple of documentaries coming out of the States in the last year, and the most recent one, I think Sarah Jessica Parker from Sex and the City is one of the executive producers, and it did well at the Sundance Film Festival. It's called The Librarians, and it just talks about that kind of slightly horrific situation that everybody can see happening in the States at the moment, where you've got very organized attacks on school and public libraries and on librarians, where people are being abused and threatened and risk their jobs and all kinds of stuff just for doing their jobs. And it's really sobering. I mean, I'm really glad to say in the UK we're not in that position and we're not on that kind of trajectory, but there are anecdotal examples, including one or two which are of a similar level, people losing their jobs, and that kind of organized pile-on online on individual librarians, which they've had threats and all the rest of it. So at the moment in the UK, we're trying to work with a major publisher to get a kind of some data about a kind of more robust benchmarking study to understand how widespread it is. There's quite a bit of anecdotal research still it's been involved with, but we just want to understand the extent of the problem, the best way to address it. And just this in the last week, there was an example of a book being removed after a parental complaint at one school. Sounds like there was no librarian in that school, there was no policies established in place, so it just kind of reinforces the unique contribution that some of our members, school librarians, can make. So it is an issue, and it seems to be a kind of attack from the right for the most part. In the UK, so CILIP produced a new updated intellectual freedom policy. I'll share it afterwards, last year. And then we've just announced a new board subcommittee looking at intellectual freedom. We've just appointed the chair. We'll be applying soon. And I know that's all very influenced by IFLA and by Faith's work in that area. So trying to find very practical ways to help our members deal with what is often a very sensitive issue. And then the other aspect to it is trying to untangle the kind of what we might think personally. And let's be honest, we tend to be left of center as a profession. And so we have a particular set of progressive values, proudly so, I think. But we do have to serve everybody in our kind of user base, including people who don't hold those views. So trying to navigate kind of what we feel and our personal biases and preferences as professionals with professional values, I think that's not an easy one. I think we have to be very careful of kind of doing any censoring ourselves, because I think that can be lead us down a very tricky path. And there are lots of other ways to kind of pursue the kind of progressive aims that often we have in the profession. So yes, I'll share a couple of links to what we're doing. Yeah, it's an ongoing issue, and I think what's happening in America just kind of serves as a kind of a warning, basically, to other countries.
Well, and certainly,
I think that's the thing.
Sorry, I was just going to say, certainly in Canada, we are in close proximity, and so we are finding that the playbook is being sent north, and it is creating challenges, especially in school libraries, but also in public libraries. And we have a couple of provincial governments, and specifically the provincial government in the province of Alberta, that actually created a policy requiring materials to be removed from the library. But there was a huge backlash, and they were forced to withdraw that. But they've come back. They came back a week or 10 days later with an approach that was looking at images that are in books that need to be removed from the library. So it is creating rather a challenging situation. And in Canada, education's provincial. So that means that you have 10 provinces and 3 territories that each may have slightly different approaches in terms of their libraries and their schools, and whether they have intellectual freedom policies. Public libraries in Canada do, for the most part, and they find it really helps them, because if they have a policy and then they have a procedure where people are making complaints or making requests for events or materials about events or materials to be removed from collections, that there is a process, there's a decision making, there's communication, and that also helps the staff that are on the front line, because often they're dealing with someone who may be feeling quite emotional about a situation. And I will say at Libraries and Archives Canada, no federal government department has a statement or policy on intellectual freedom. It hasn't really come up, but we're going to be moving in with the Ottawa Public Library, which is the 4th largest public library system in Canada, into a new building next year. And so we're in the vanguard of federal government organizations, and we'll be the first one to be creating an intellectual freedom statement. And then we'll be working with other government departments. And, I think it's a major issue for all of us to deal with. And it is something that came out as a radical proposition from our session in Astana.
So when we mentioned faith, and which is a good segue into our next video, which is Jonathan Hernandez Perez from Mexico, who is also the chair of FAIF. And FAIF is the freedom of access to information and freedom of expression. So I've got a short video from Jonathan.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Hernandez from Mexico. So, we love to give libraries inspirational names, sanctuaries, guardians of knowledge, and pillars of the community, and they encompass all these roles. But in today's world, that narrative feels a little too comfortable, because the truth is that libraries are no longer just sanctuaries or guardians. Increasingly, they are turning into battlegrounds. From every angle, our core values are under siege. We're seeing books challenged and removed at alarming rates, not just regionally, but globally. We also see misinformation and disinformation weaponized, amplified by generative AI, eroding public trust and undermining democratic processes. Societies are fragmenting, and distrust in science and scholarship are on the rise. Beneath it all, often silently, we see the very idea of intellectual freedom being chipped away. So, what does the world truly need from its libraries today? That's a complex question, but I think that it needs libraries to effectively address the contemporary challenges we are experiencing. Think about it. Most major global problems affecting society right now are fundamentally information-related issues. Just consider the disinformation surrounding, for example, climate change, or the narratives about migrants or health issues, and how quickly such misinformation can escalate into serious societal problems if not addressed promptly. Look at the challenges posed by the unethical use of generative AI in academic work, or societies fragmented by algorithms and platforms. So, in all these critical areas, libraries have a vital role. We are among the few institutions with the unique potential to positively influence these challenges. No other cultural institution can address the pressing issues of our time in the multifaceted way libraries can. From an impactful talk with experts in your local branch to developing comprehensive plans for digital literacy, advocacy, and countless other forms of influence. So, this demands we mobilize, cooperate, and innovate like never before. It means stepping out of comfort zones and actively entering the public discourse, firmly defending the essential role we played in fostering informed and engaged communities. So, here's a concrete idea to put this into action. In your library, let's identify and focus on one single global challenge that deeply resonates with your community right now. Then, devise the most effective way for your libraries to address it. And here's a tip. You can use many of IFLA guides and materials on various global challenges. For example, the latest version of the IFLA Trend Report. This could begin with organizing an insightful conference or a compelling webinar to spark initial awareness and discussion. From there, let's build a clear path to positively influence your community, evaluating the results and impact over the medium term, and most important, inspiring other libraries to follow your lead. Libraries are more necessary than ever. Our collective existence, and indeed the future of an informed citizenry, depends on our willingness to embrace our relevance in society. Thank you.
So again, I think that's a great video from Jonathan. He said so much in such a short time, but also picked up a lot of the themes that we've been talking about, and the positively influence, but also the big problems that are facing our global community, but also our local communities as well. Picked up a lot of things from the Trend Report. Misinformation, disinformation, climate change, digital literacy, AI. So we do have a question for our participants, and it's picking up on Jonathan's what he posed to us is around what's a single global challenge that resonates with your community. So perhaps while those comments are coming in, Louis, I know that CILIP's been pretty active in I guess, advocating to government around how libraries can solve some of the big problems that they're facing in their communities. I'm thinking around the work that you've done on digital literacy, but also the green library hubs. Do you want to react to some of the things that Jonathan said, but put it in the context of how you've been working to actually advocate for libraries and how libraries can help solve some of these problems?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of dedicated work streams around sustainability. So we're in our third year of something we're calling Green Libraries, which again, I think was influenced by IFLA, and I'll share links afterwards. So we have an annual conference, an annual kind of week of kind of action and campaigning. You've got a community of libraries and individuals who've signed up to a kind of statement. So you've got a kind of ready-made network of people who care about sustainability, and it's an opportunity for different library services to share what they're doing. And there's two aspects to that. One of them is about getting their own houses in order. So what's their carbon footprint and things like that. But it's the thing that I think is more exciting is what can they do? How can they influence their user communities? So, you know, what books, what information, what resources do they provide to kind of support societal change, basically, and be a kind of a place for people to debate how that's going to work with inspiring events and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's about impact. It's slightly walking the walk, but it's much more about influencing society and talking about how we can all adjust to net zero and other sustainability challenges. And then on other things, so the top issue is probably economic growth. And this is sometimes a slightly challenging one for our sector. Some people don't like the concept of talking about growth. It feels a bit kind of commercial, and we're often a kind of publicly funded sector, not always. And so it kind of can feel a bit uncomfortable to talk about economic growth too commercial. But on the one hand, I think all of our library services do have a good growth story to tell. It's not always easy to evidence it. In the UK, our national library, the British Library, runs a network of things called the Business and IP Centre Network, BIPCs, and that's basically a network. I think there's 21 public libraries in that now, and it's a range of resources to help entrepreneurs start their businesses. And what's really good about that is they've had a very rigorous evaluation program throughout. So they have some of the best quantitative economic data to show the impact of what they're doing. So number of startups, longevity of the startups, diversity of the founders, and then how that compares to national averages and how that happens in different local areas, not just at a national level. So it's a really good example of the kind of positive economic impact that public libraries can have with support of a national library. And then the other aspect is university libraries. So in this country, at least, there isn't much of a kind of public-facing advocacy around university libraries. It's very much bundled in with university advocacy, and university advocacy is very effective. They do impact studies showing hundreds of billions of pounds of economic impact of universities. But obviously, whether it's teaching, research, or knowledge exchange, the university library is really at the heart of what those institutions do. It's just the impact of the university libraries is not separated out. Data point we have an annual national student survey where students across all UK universities are asked 30 questions about what they value, and the library is always like top 2, top 3. I think it was top 2 out of 30 issues this year. So we know that it makes a difference to students. We know that it has an economic impact, but it's hard to kind of disaggregate the impact of the university library from the wider impact of the university. And that's quite a common theme, actually. I think a lot of our libraries are embedded in other institutions, and it's sometimes difficult to draw out the impact, especially on something like the economy of a particular library service. A couple of examples.
Yeah, great. And I think the great thing about CILIP is you make so much of your information, your reports, your research available online on your website. So thank you for that. And of course, you have referenced the fact that IFLA does a similar thing as well. I think some of the global challenges that we're getting up on our screen, though, are really the really big issues across our globe: the threat of war, undemocratic movements, polarization of society, as well as, and I guess a couple there on mental and physical health. And I guess I was at a public libraries conference a few months ago, and of course, one of the things that they were talking about was the significant increase in members of the community coming in who have mental health problems, and how to respond to that situation. I know in Canada there's different libraries that have responded to that, but employing social workers within libraries to support the community as well is certainly some of the ways that that's being addressed. So we do have a couple of other sort of scale polls to ask around is how well is your library responding to the challenges, engaging with our stakeholders well, and how we're leveraging our partnerships effectively. And I think we've certainly talked around some of these issues today around partnerships. And Louis, you've given us some really good examples already around how you're using partnerships effectively within across the UK, but also in separate communities as well. So, so I think it looks like we're scoring a little bit lower down here as well. So how do you support, Louis, your members in actually building their skills in partnering, or how to engage with their stakeholders?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I really like in IFLA's new strategy that what are your priorities is helping members to set libraries up as partners. I think that's really important. We could do a lot more, if I'm honest. I think one of the things we've done recently, it's more on the advocacy side, and it's a kind of advocacy toolkit with like template letters to politicians and getting them to come and visit the service. But that's very much with the aim of saying, you know, if you care about child literacy or you care about loneliness, then come and visit our library, find out what we can do to help you. And, you know, politicians love libraries because they're very visual. They make great backdrops for, you know, media and social media images. This is why since the pandemic, all of our Zoom backgrounds are full of amazing, impressive shelves of books. I can see some impressive books behind Leslie, for example. So I think you shouldn't underestimate that kind of appeal of libraries as a kind of visual backdrop is desperate for coverage. With funders, it's a slightly different kind of question. Funders are looking for evidence that you can support their cause, and that is quite a kind of a capacity building exercise. So within CILIP, we have a team of about 3 or 4 project managers who bid for projects, often jointly, and then deliver those projects. And that team is doing really well, but we're still developing that capacity, and it's very hard to run it in a way that generates a surplus for the organization. So that's a kind of set of capabilities in a muscle that takes a bit of time to develop. But often it does come down to evidence. You need, you know, funders are interested if you can demonstrate your reach, your impact. That's what gets their attention, because they can do as credible partners, but you've got to build up the kind of infrastructure to gather data that's robust.
So certainly impacts come up in a lot in the conversation today. I know that our stakeholders, particularly politicians, that's the first question they have is, what's the impact? How are you going to measure the impact? And having confidence that we're actually going to solve the problem that they see needs to be solved as well.
And I think
so
we
Leslie,
can see from the polls, sorry, Vicki, I think we could see from the polls that the confidence level in terms of being able to deal with the challenges is sort of middle of the road. And so there's an area I think that we can really support members of IFLA and you know, working with actually IFLA partnering with its member associations and also, you know, with other stakeholders, because really we're getting, you know, 5 for responding well to the challenge, 5.1 engaging with stakeholders, and 5.8 for leveraging partnerships effectively. So I think this is something that we can take away and look at how we can really support building strength in this area, because I think, as you both mentioned, partnerships have become really quite impactful and strategic for libraries. And Vicki was mentioning Canadian libraries. Yes, some of them have hired social workers and nutrition experts and people to provide support in terms of other public health needs. They're also partnering actually with those other departments in perhaps their city or their region, and having the library be a hub where services can be offered, where people might not feel comfortable going actually to the formal service, but they feel much more comfortable in being able to access these kind of services within the library. So I think that there are things that we can do and share in terms of practice that's worked to be able to support people, in developing better ways of coping with these challenges that we're facing today.
I think it comes back to what we also talked about in the trend report. We need new skill sets, capabilities within our organisation. So bringing in different expertise is really important as well.
Now, I think we're sort of heading towards the conclusion of our session today. I do think that we've had a lot that has built on the sessions that we did in the lead up in July and then in Astana in August. But Louis' mention of, empowering impact and having a focus on how we can have impact really does bring together the trends we've been hearing around the importance of partnerships, the importance of advocacy, and also that we do need to be creative and innovative in the challenges that we're facing and how we can deal with those. We're certainly seeing the ongoing theme in society of trust and how we can rebuild, regain, renegotiate trust, because we know that mis and disinformation is having a massive impact. And as Jonathan said, information is sort of one of the key currencies right now. And people are using and misusing it in relation to so many different global factors that we're dealing with in terms of climate change, in terms of migration, in terms of threats of war. So it does become quite important for our libraries to really be kind of adept at supporting and saving their communities around some of these issues, and also ensuring that people have not only basic literacy, but they've got that digital literacy that they can use. And I think Jonathan also highlighted the importance of cooperation, so we are stronger together, and the importance of innovation. And then Louis shared some really interesting examples in the UK, and especially, around the Business Library and Intellectual Property Center, and then things around green libraries, which I think is a preoccupation for all of us, ensuring that our libraries are greener and our libraries are supporting our communities and being greener. And so, Louis, are there some thoughts you'd like to just share as sort of closing remarks, and then we'll go to Vicki after that? Oh, we can't hear you. I can't hear you. Interesting. Okay, well, yes. So Louis will put some things into our chat. And so, Vicki, did you have some last reflections that you wanted to share?
I think it's been a good conversation. I think it's really highlighted that no matter where you live in the world, we're all talking about the same things. We're all working out how we respond to different challenges. As I've commented so many times, I think, one of the great things about us as a profession is our willingness to share our learnings, share our reports and our research. And I think, the theme that's really come through so much today is around impact. I particularly like Silip's new theme, logo, whatever it is, strategic plan, Louis, empowering impact. and thinking about where we can have impact, I think is really important as well. And we've seen that, and that's really what the trend report is about, is considering where we want to have influence and where we can support the changes that need to be made. So I think it's been really interesting. Thank you very much, Leslie.
Well, thank you to Vicki and thank you to Louis. And we do have another session that we're doing tomorrow, and Sam Helmick, the president of the American Library Association, will be joining us for that. And we do have more information available on the IFLA website. We will also be sharing all the full deck of the recorded presentations so that you can refer to them later, or you can recommend them to friends and colleagues. And, you know, this really is setting the stage for the work that we're going to be doing, that we're all going to do together over the next 2 years. And, you know, we're about to move into the 98th year of IFLA, getting ready to move forward to our centenary in 2027, and really taking our trend report and the strategy that we have for IFLA to enable and support libraries globally to be more impactful and to empower them to be bold. And so I'd like to thank everyone for participating in today's session. A special thank you to Vicki and to Louis and to our master in the background, making sure everything was working properly, Stephen Viber. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the participants that we have from places around the world. And we look forward to seeing you possibly tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, at upcoming opportunities to engage with IFLA and with colleagues around the world, and to make sure that libraries are in fact being bold and having impact. So thank you all.
Thank you.